By the way, Andy Jassy told me on this broadcast, I believe, about a month ago, we're going to be raising prices. Of course, there was a bit of a slapback to Walmart when Doug McMillon made those comments.
4 months, Wall Street figured that was the worst-case scenario, slightly higher price tags. Then, overnight, Amazon rewrote the playbook. Instead of passing the cost to shoppers, it quietly loaded an entire headquarters onto cargo planes bound for the United Arab Emirates, the world's deepest free trade haven. While pundits fussed over pennies on toilet paper, Jeff Bezos' empire carved a tax-free escape route that leaves America's 145% tariff wall fading in the rearview mirror. This isn't a symbolic stunt, it yanks the command center out of Seattle and plants it in the desert, safely beyond presidential threats. If confirmed, it would be the largest corporate relocation in U.S. history and the ultimate verdict on Trump's tariff war. But Devitt's warning was just the first tremor. The real quake is still rumbling toward Main Street. It started as a ripple, then the numbers spiked into territory no supply chain model could survive. In early April, the White House slapped a 145% blanket tariff on Chinese imports, a rate Wall Street analysts had once dismissed as political brinkmanship. Within days, officials tightened the screws again. An executive order abolished the $800 de minimis loophole, meaning every low-cost parcel from China or Hong Kong would now pay full freight. For Amazon's logistics brains in Seattle, the math flipped from slim margin to red ink catastrophe almost overnight. That loophole had underpinned millions of Prime-eligible trinkets, phone chargers, drill bits, novelty socks that floated into U.S. warehouses duty-free. When the exemption vanished on May 2nd, tariffs on those same items jumped as high as 54% per package, and in many cases much higher once the new 145% umbrella settled in. Internally, dashboards lit up crimson. Chinese third-party sellers saw order volume collapse by an estimated 80% in 72 hours, according to 2 leaked vendor support memos. Procurement teams began canceling contracts, ocean freight lanes were rerouted away from Long Beach and toward Mexican transshipment hubs, hoping to dodge the cost spiral. Overnight air shipments, Amazon's priciest lifeline for same-day delivery, were frozen except for medical gear and top-tier electronics. But even the most aggressive belt-tightening couldn't plug the bleed. With every tariff revision, algorithms had to choose, hike prices and risk losing the buy box, or eat the duty and wreck margins. For a few tense weeks the company tried the latter, masking costs behind promotional subsidies and warehouse credits. Yet by mid-May, CFO Brian Olsavsky's ledger showed a billions-deep crater, and the quarter hadn't even closed. And as the tariff waves kept surging, Amazon's war room drafted a plan so audacious it would redraw the global retail map entirely.
Today he's saying Amazon is actually working on a foldable device. It kind of sounds like a foldable Kindle Fire tablet.
While analysts drooled over bendable glass, Amazon's board fixated on something far more flexible: jurisdiction. The foldable tablet scoop wasn't a gadget tease, it was the first breadcrumb hinting that the entire devices division had already packed its prototyping labs and shipped them to Dubai's Jebel Ali free zone, no tariffs, zero corporate tax, flight time to 2/3 of the planet under 8 hours. Inside Building 14, Panos Panay's engineers unbolted thermal chambers and CNC rigs, labeling the crates Seraph Phase 1. HR spreadsheets quietly flipped dozens of senior staff to remote GMT +4. One VP joked on Slack, "We're testing more than hinges, we're testing jurisdictions." Finance moved just as nimbly. A line item called Global Resilience spend $3 billion greenlit the first wave of server racks and archive drives. Amazon's white-tailed 767s have been ghosting into Al Maktoum International 3 at a time, each flight filed under generic airway bills to keep curious eyes off the manifest. Why the desert? Because Dubai lets you re-export to Europe, Asia, or Africa without touching a tariff wall, and its free trade perks run until 2050. For a retailer bleeding billions under Trump's new duties, the math isn't hard: pivot or perish. Bezos' empire chose to pivot sideways, not head-on, turning trade war into a geographical problem it can solve with GPS coordinates. And if Amazon can yank its command center halfway around the world without breaking stride, Washington's next nightmare writes itself. Who follows next? That answer starts to surface the moment a Gulf finance minister fires off a single congratulatory tweet. On paper, Dubai looks like a sun-baked mirage of skyscrapers and duty-free malls. In Amazon's spreadsheets, it's a fortress against tariffs. The Emirates Jebel Ali Free Zone grants qualifying companies a 0% corporate tax rate on qualifying income for up to 50 years, and even after the UAE rolled out a new 9% federal tax, Free Zone firms that keep real substance on the ground still pay nothing on most profits. Tax breaks are only the first bullet point. Jebel Ali sits astride the world's third busiest container port and an airport built to move 2-day parcels to 4 billion consumers within an 8-hour flight. That single radius spans Mumbai's back-end coders, Nairobi's emerging middle class, and Frankfurt's freight rails, effectively turning Dubai into the planet's biggest overnight shipping trampoline. And unlike Washington, the UAE courts multinationals with velvet rope diplomacy. When Amazon announced a new Abu Dhabi fulfillment center, the local investment office fronted the land and bragged about thousands of tech sector jobs it would spawn, no buy local or else strings attached. Regulators move just as fast. Need a crypto payments sandbox? A carbon-neutral warehouse permit? Dubai issues both in weeks, not months. Executives who once spent half their life in DC waiting room purgatory can now clear red tape over mint tea beside the Gulf. For Bezos's lieutenants, the calculus is brutal simplicity. 145% tariffs in Seattle versus 0% in Jebel Ali. A supply chain that grinds across 2 oceans versus one that leapfrogs 3 continents overnight. A president who wields tariffs like tweets versus a monarchy that signs 50-year tax letters. In a trade war measured in percentage points, geography just became Amazon's ultimate discount code. And when that discount code works for the biggest retailer on earth, boardrooms in Cupertino and Dearborn start typing it in next. Amazon's sidestep was only the opening salvo. Within weeks, the tariff shockwaves knocked over other giants, each topple louder than the last. Ford fell first. On May 7th, the automaker tacked up to $2,000 onto every Mustang Mach-E, Bronco Sport, and Maverick that rolls north from its Mexican plants, blaming Trump-era duties for a $2.5 billion hit to this year's balance sheet. The hikes kick in for vehicles built after May 2nd. Inventory already on U.S. lots is safe, for now. It's the clearest price tag proof yet that tariff math travels straight from White House podium to the dealership sticker. Next came Apple. After CEO Tim Cook skipped a presidential photo op, Trump threatened a 25% levy on every iPhone not stamped "Made in USA." Reuters reports the threat could activate as soon as June 1st, forcing Cupertino to weigh whether India or Vietnam assembly lines still make sense. Cook's behind-closed-doors visit to Washington produced no truce, only a tighter deadline. Investors now whisper about an Arizona iPhone amid talk of emergency U.S. tooling. Meanwhile, an unexpected challenger just smelled opportunity. Comet, the defunct UK electronics chain, is being resurrected online by Marketplace on Buy with a war chest aimed at undercutting Amazon and KE's on price. A nostalgic brand at rock-bottom tax rates is suddenly pitching itself as the tariff-proof alternative for bargain hunters. If it lures even a sliver of Prime's price-sensitive base, Amazon's margin problem goes from surgical to systemic. Even the ultra-discount apps aren't immune. Shine and Temu watched U.S. parcel traffic crater after the de minimis loophole died, though a temporary reprieve, tariffs trimmed from 145% to 30%, buys them only weeks to reroute supply chains or raise prices. One pattern ties every headline together. The moment Amazon showed escape was possible, the rest of corporate America reached for the door. And by midsummer, when those price increases finally hit household budgets, the political bill comes due. June closes out Amazon's emergency stockpile, and that's when the tariff math finally hits the checkout lane. Internal planners warn Prime Day 2025, slated for July 15th to 16th, will debut with 7 to 10% price bumps and a noticeably thinner product lineup after tens of thousands of Chinese third-party listings vanished when the de minimis loophole died. Even Amazon's own seller blog now cautions shoppers to expect fewer lightning deals this year. Consumers are already bracing. A Harris poll for Bloomberg shows 56% of U.S. adults believe their household finances would be better off without Trump's tariffs, and 52% doubt the levies will ever pay off. An AP/NRC survey finds half of Americans fear prices will rise a lot because of the trade war, while another 30% expect at least some inflation. Even a CBS poll, usually kinder to incumbents, reports most voters think the president is too focused on tariffs, not enough on lowering prices. The blowback is bipartisan. Retail groups warn of a $90 billion consumer cost surge by year-end. Farm state senators beg for exemptions as grain elevators lose Chinese buyers. and downtown mayors fret over shuttered Main Street storefronts once weekend shoppers flinch at new sticker prices. Meanwhile, Ford's $2,000 uptick on Mexico-built models and Apple's looming 25% iPhone levy keep the headlines smoldering. Team Trump counters with familiar bravado, short-term pain, long-term gain, but the optics are brutal. Every receipt that climbs $1 becomes a pocket-sized campaign flyer for his opponents, and grocery aisles do not vote along party lines. If Amazon's HQ on-the-run gambit proves profitable, Wall Street expects a half-dozen multinationals to copy-paste the UAE template before Christmas, stripping more jobs and tax revenue from the map Trump vowed to protect. And so the summer showdown is set, tariffs on one side, rising prices on the other, and the American voter stuck in the middle with an emptying wallet. Because when the cost of loyalty is tacked onto every barcode, even the most patriotic shopper starts looking for the exit. Amazon's rumored sprint to the UAE isn't a protest, it's a ledger-driven verdict on a trade war that keeps rewriting the rules. Ford's sticker shock, Apple's looming iPhone levy, and a resurrected comet nipping at Prime's heels all point to the same equation. When the cost of staying outweighs the cost of leaving, even titans roll their bags to the departure gate. By midsummer, shoppers will feel at first fewer lightning deals, leaner shelves, price tags a few painful dollars fatter. Then come the polls, when voters decide whether tariff walls really guard Main Street or just wall in higher bills. So here's the question the next paycheck will answer. Are runaway prices a fair trade for economic nationalism, or is the real price of future built somewhere else? Let me know where you land in the comments, and if you found this breakdown eye-opening, hit subscribe, because the next corporate domino is already wobbling.